should have talked about this one. The Bryan Alvarez AEW collision numbers were quote-unquote good. So let me just read this. I might cut this out. We'll see how it goes. AEW collision numbers were 366,000 this past Saturday, 0.09 in 18 to 49, the second lowest viewership ever. Average this past Saturday. College football.
That's good.
Well, I'm going to give you the quote for Bryan quite soon. College football competition was far lower than usual, but WWE Crown Jewel was on earlier in the day, but not head-to-head. It should also be worth noting that Rampage did 298,000, which also may have been the second worst viewer average in its regular
Rampage
time
did what?
298,000.
Wow.
Seriously, they get more with old movies.
Hell, that's I swear to God. Impact, that makes Impact look good.
Yeah. So, Bryan Alvarez went on Wrestling Observer Live this past Tuesday, trying to spin the second worst collision rating ever with no significant direct competition into a positive. I guess this would be considered good news, okay? The collision quarters were virtually an exact straight line. There were no ups and downs. Like, the biggest up and down was like maybe 40,000 viewers at the very beginning, and other than that, it just went straight across. I mean, it's easy to go straight across when no one's watching in the first place.
Yeah. And who knows what, you could just have it on to record. You're not even watching it. You may not even watch it, but I don't think that's good. And we predicted this several months ago when we said that they're going to be running into those WWE pay-per-views and college football. So he didn't think Alabama LSU on TV was serious competition.
Well, the views for that were way down. Like, some of these college football games get like 13 million. I think that one was about 7 million.
Well, it's 7 million people, though.
Oh, yeah.
Still a lot. I mean, a lot of people don't have 4 or 5 TVs in their house. You know, they might have 2. Some of them just have 1. So it's either tuned to wrestling or the football game or something else, or it may not even be on. But I don't know how you can spin that into a positive anyway. Because when the advertisers look at it, they don't look at what's it's against or anything. They look at that bulk number and they go by there. That's what they're paying it for.
Yeah, and the advertising, as we found out with SmackDown very recently, advertisers don't pay as much for wrestling as they do for certainly other sports or regular TV anyway. So wrestling has to do fantastic in the ratings.
That's always been that way. Because pro wrestling has always been like the whipping boy of TV broadcasting. They get a big number. That's why on the local shows you used to get used car lots and furniture lots and Family Dollar store, and you get things like that. But you don't get to the top run commercials. You just don't get them.
Now, in your opinion, and this is a very important distinction here, is, as we said before, Crown Jewel was on the same day, but it was not head-to-head. Bryan Alvarez was using, and Dave Meltzer to a point, but I'll back up Meltzer in a minute, is saying, well, hell, you know, you watch 3.5 hours of wrestling, you don't want to watch Collision afterwards with 2 more hours of wrestling. Do you buy that?
Well, that is a good take, though.
Yeah.
If you watched it, yeah.
Well, but the point is that Collision's worst viewerships ever so far, all of them have been head-to-head against WWE major shows, either NXT or premium live events, however they're calling them now. But the fact is that this wasn't head-to-head. It didn't have any major competition, and it still did the second worst rating Collision's ever done. So you can't blame all of that on going, you know, being on the same day as some other wrestling, surely.
You can blame AEW for it being the worst or next to worst because they're not programming their talent. They're not telling. How many times have I said this? They're not telling a story. I mean, you like they gave the MJF and who was he against? Omega.
Yeah.
They just booked it. I mean, what's the buildup? Would you put, say you have this boxer, you don't put this boxer against just a regular boxer that's coming up without the boxer winning a bunch of matches and the champion. Then they go, and now you think the title might change hands. You build it. That's been since day zero. So MJF and Omega were just thrown because it's Tony Khan's dream match, I guess. But yet there was no build up to that. And if they'd have built it up, they would have done a lot more. Mm-hmm. And it was a good match.
So
imagine if they'd have built up to it.
That was the week before. This last Saturday was
They still didn't build up to it.
Oh no!
Even I don't care if it was a year ago. Okay, but this last Saturday it was what?
Shit. It had a bunch of matches no one were interested in, including a main event that no one was interested in. And it's just like people going out there making excuses for, well, WWE had this show earlier in the day. It was sunny outside. Oh, it was rainy outside. Oh,
yeah. McDonald's is open.
Yeah,
McDonald's is open late.
Oh, yeah. I'm a Scorpio. Oh, it's just like, no, if you had a show people wanted to watch, they would watch it. And come up with these excuses that, oh, wrestling was on 4 hours earlier, or there's a completely different sport that has no bearing on wrestling. No, if you program something that people really want to see with a good build and a good story and something relatable, people will watch it, or they'll at least record it and watch it later that night.
That's how you take a average talent and get them over. You tell a story, because the story supersedes their actual wrestling talent, because you want to see how the story ends. You want to see how it progresses, not whether they win or not, but you want to see the twist and the turn. But apparently somebody didn't tell Tony, because if you would sit down with Tony or somebody and tell him kind of how to do this, I don't think he'd have any qualms about doing it. That's why I preach patience. You got to have patience, and your patience will usually win out in the end. I keep talking about when I booked Puerto Rico, I took it over when it had a 2.6 rating, and took it to almost at one point I did over a 20 with a match that I didn't think would be that good, but they tuned in for it. Of course, it was raining that day, so the people stayed in and watched TV. So that's what they said. That's what Meltzer said. Yeah. Even Meltzer wrote about how I booked Puerto Rico. He said the show was not bad. Not bad. He didn't say the show was good, but he said it takes Mantell like almost it takes him forever to pull the trigger, to shoot the angle. Well, that's what I intended to do, because finally when I pull that trigger, I know they're ready. So that's why I would pull the trigger, guess what? Right before we went to a stadium show, because I wanted to put a lot of people in it, and they didn't disappoint me. So it was all story. You could look at some of the Puerto Rican matches, you go, that's the shits. It really wasn't, but it kind of was.
But the wrestling's almost like the least important bit. It's the story that goes to it.
Kidding. I always wanted to do this angle. I don't show these two wrestlers right off the bat, but you see a trailer. You know what a trailer is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trailer parks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a beat up trailer. And all of a sudden you shoot inside and you got two reclining chairs. And you don't see who's in the chairs. You just see shooting between the chairs to the TV. And it's like you got like antennas on the TV. It's old. And one of them is saying with a real country accent, Hell, I could whoop his ass. He said, oh, you can't whoop his ass. He beat the shit out of you. And they're talking. And all of a sudden, you show about 20 seconds of that and you get out of it. Now, the first thing I'm going to think, what the hell was that? What was that? And then finally, the next week, you got to follow with something. And it's just, they don't like this one guy on TV and they're talking about him. You do it again. And finally, when you come time to reveal these two guys, one of the managers on TV said, who are those guys? And they write him a letter and he goes on a trip in the mountains to find these two guys. And you pace this over 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Finally, when it comes to the time that you're going to reveal these guys, I think you'd have an audience. They want to see who these two jack-offs are. And you send him up there and he pulls up in a trailer park and you going around the mountains and and you build it all the way through the show. So not only do you have your wrestling show going on, you got a story that is totally unconnected with wrestling, but it is connected to wrestling. And you know, somehow viewers know that this story is going to come back to the ring somewhere, some way, but at least they get a proper introduction and a proper build. Now, and they could be two big fat guys but the manager, you got this hot manager and he takes over these guys, he's going to make them champions. So we'll see where it goes. I don't even have a finish to it yet. I don't even know how it goes. See, the way I write stuff, I write it as it goes. I try not to write more than a month ahead because, hell, one of them could fall over dead with a heart attack. One time in Florida.
Ric Flair, are you?
No. One time in Florida, they brought in Bobby Shane. And he was there. And the way they used to do, they called it bicycle tapes because the tapes they used to have was about a 2-inch. Then it went to 1 inch. Then it went on down to the mini tapes, of course. But the big ones, that's what they were using to video their shows. And they were heavy too. They was like, that was a tape. And you had to hand deliver it to the TV station. So Bobby Shane, he was a pilot, and he got killed in a car crash. So, and they used to do, I think, Tampa first, then it would go to Jacksonville, then maybe to Tallahassee. But they would bicycle those tapes around for about 3 weeks after Bobby Shane got killed. He was on the tapes. And the people all knew that he had already got killed in the plane crash, but it was too late to take him out. It cost too much and they just didn't do it. So for 3 weeks, they had a dead man on the tapes. So I guess they just worked through that and just let the time run out on it. And I forgot who told me that story. I was in Florida. Somebody told me that story, but I'm saying, damn, I don't know how I would handle that. I mean, how could you handle it? You'd have to get the tapes back. I don't know. Crazy.
Just to finish off what I was going to say, Dave Meltzer basically said, yeah, Crown Jewel was a factor, but no, it's terrible. Terrible rating, and Collision was a bad show. We've got a couple of bits more
Dave
news.
Meltzer said it was a bad show?
Well, he probably just said it wasn't a show of any interest to anybody, and that's probably the real reason. But it was just more Bryan Alvarez talking about how he was just basically trying to spin.
Okay, Meltzer said what show was...
Oh, the 366,000 or whatever Collision thing.
And Meltzer said, it's nothing spectacular.
Yeah, basically.